By this point, no matter which way you cut it, the zombie genre is played out. It's a dead thing. And that wasn't even meant to be a pun either, I'm being serious. Over the years, it seemed if writers wanted to put their characters in a doomsday setting, where they could pile on the violence, they just chucked zombies into it. For me, it got boring a long time ago. But then came along The Walking Dead, a comic series created by Robert Kirkman, which eventually branched out into a hit TV show, and for our particular case, a successful video game franchise by Telltale. The Walking Dead did drop its characters into a zombie apocalypse, but rather than drive it down the action horror genre like many others, it took it towards drama instead. The zombies, or walkers as this universe calls them, are the threat to keep pressure on the characters, but they're not the focus. The focus instead lies on developing the characters that are trying to survive. What are they like? What are their motivations? In a world that's gone to shit, what are they still living for? And how are they choosing to live? This has allowed The Walking Dead to contain a cast that feels more fleshed out than your run-of-the-mill zombie story. You are more invested into these characters thanks to the focus being on them, and bloody hell does it do a fantastic job at making you give a crap. You should probably expect spoilers. Playing as the character Lee Everett during Season 1, Lee comes across Clementine while he himself is trying to survive his initial brush with a group of walkers. And can I just say how weird it is for me to say the word walkers when referring to zombies? Because I don't know if you know, here in the UK, what Americans would call Lay's potato chips is called Walker's crisps over here, so whenever I say the term walkers, I'm not thinking of zombies, I'm thinking of food snacks. Anyway, what was I saying? Lee escapes the horde by entering Clem's residence and communicates with Clem via walkie-talkie while she hides in her treehouse. Clem had been left at home with a babysitter while her parents were taking a trip out to Savannah, and as luck tends to have it in these types of story setups, the babysitter went and got herself turned into a zombie. Good job, well done. Lee is then surprise attacked by said zombie, and it's Clem who came to his rescue, passing him a hammer and letting him get old school. It was at this point that these two characters would secure an incredibly tight bond with one another. Even though The Walking Dead is a choice-based game, letting you decide how Lee reacts to certain situations, the thing that remains at the top of his priority is his relationship with Clementine. For Clem, her journey through Season 1 sees her coming to terms with what has become of the world, adapting to these new hostile environments, all the while seeing if she can find her parents. Naturally, she won't be able to do all this alone and looks to Lee for guidance and security. With his help, she hopes to one day see her parents again, as unlikely as that's going to be. Visual design. The cast tend to change their clothes every once in a while throughout the game. These are not major changes, usually being nothing more than a different jacket or shirt, and it's mostly used to show the passing of time between episodes. Clothing, like everything else in their world, is now something that is scavenged for. If a character appears wearing something different, it likely means they were probably very lucky to get that item in the first place. Clem herself goes for a small number of minor outfit changes as the game progresses, but nothing too drastic in terms of visual design. The only real big change occurs to her hairstyle. For most of Season 1, Clementine's hair sticks out from underneath her hat like a big garden hedge. Lee understands that leaving Clem with hair like that while living in such conditions is asking for trouble, and she had been grabbed by her hair at least once already. Under the advice from a brief acquaintance named Chuck, Lee cuts Clementine's hair into 2 short buns in the hopes that it'll reduce the risk of her getting grabbed again. Of course, Clem liked her hairstyle and wasn't too keen on changing it. Naturally, she was going to be a bit upset about cutting it off, but due to the journey of the game and how things progress, it ends up becoming the default hairstyle for her, and she keeps it cut short from here on out. If we're talking preferences, I always dug the original hairstyle more, if only for the fact that it gave a much greater shape to her entire body shot. The hat on her head kept the top restricted, allowing the rest of her hair to puff out from the sides. I always thought it looked cuter of the two, but again, it's just a preference. Of course, this is a zombie apocalypse and some compromises need to be made in order to survive. I respect the reasons for the change, as well as appreciating the lasting legacy of why it must remain short. One of the major things that doesn't change with Clementine's design is her hat. Given to her by her father at some point prior to the events of the game, Clem is always seen wearing it, and should she ever be seen without it, then something is definitely amiss. I'm glad the item she chooses to remember her father by is something as simple as a baseball cap. It's nothing that's trying to grab your attention like an elaborate necklace or something, it's just a hat that's sitting on her head. But it's one of the most important items this character will ever carry, and in turn it's become iconic to the series. When you see that hat, you know exactly who it belongs to. The hat itself, just like getting a haircut, carries its own little legacy, and one that travels with Clem throughout the rest of The Walking Dead. Not sure what the D stands for though. What do you think it stands for? You lot are gonna write Dick in the comments now, aren't you? Go on then. Personality. First thing you'll notice about Clementine is she's incredibly polite when speaking. All of her sentences are structured coherently. Even when she's excited, she remains fairly composed and won't stumble over her words. She's also kind-hearted, showing that regardless of the hellish world they live in, there's still some shreds of humanity left. Her parents are to thank for this, seeing as they raised Clementine up until this point in time. The neighbourhood in which she grew up in also seemed fairly nice, and the environment around her likely contributed to her upbringing as well. Clem is also quite intelligent for her age, claiming that her studies at school were easy. Because of her intellect, Clementine is somewhat of a fast learner, picking up new skills in little to no time at all. Her intelligence also means she has a fairly good understanding of what goes on around her. When she is being observant, she understands enough to get the main gist of a situation, and whatever she needs further information on, she'll usually inquire about it to Lee. Clementine does make mistakes though. At the end of the day, she is still just a child and will occasionally slip up without her brain coming to the rescue in time. Take for instance this harmless little scene.
What's this thing?
Daddy said it's called a salt lick.
Yeah, but don't lick it. It's gross.
Did you lick it?
I don't know.
Here, Clem didn't realise she had cornered herself with her opinion of how a salt lick tastes, until she was questioned about it and it was too late to save herself from embarrassment. Clem might certainly be brighter than any other kid her age, but she's still just a kid that lacks hands-on experience with situations, and I love how the game doesn't forget that, nor does it try to treat Clem as some kind of special exception. She's a kid. She's a smart one at that, but she's still just a kid. With the world so drastically changed from what it used to be, it's going to have an effect on the person she'll become later on in life. Lee as her guardian already begins putting in the essential foundations for her to grow from. Clem can be as kind as much as she wants, but she has to be prepared for when that kindness might get abused or taken for a weakness. It's a matter of survival now, and not everybody is going to treat her the same way that Lee will. That's a lot of pressure for a 9-year-old girl to take, but these are essential lessons to learn if she is to survive in such a harsh world now. I feel Season 1 of The Walking Dead does a fantastic job at portraying in somewhat visual terms the loss of her childhood innocence, the naivety of a kid, and how that aspect ends up getting replaced by caution through experience. It's a very strong evolution that the character goes through, and it in turn offers us quite an exceptional arc to Clementine's story. Importance. Throughout Season 1, Clem befriended a number of people, but no other person came closer to her than Lee did. The pair often end up saving one another in some capacity, and they are considered their own team, even when travelling as part of a bigger group. Lee didn't have anybody left after the apocalypse kicked into overdrive. Clem was left all alone and was therefore in a similar situation to Lee, so the two began looking out for each other right from day one, and it remained like that throughout the story arc. To Clem, Lee is a saviour and someone that she knows she can absolutely rely on without a doubt. Even if Lee should ever let her down, she will forgive him because she knows he's a genuine person that cares about her. With no commitments tying him down, Lee himself lives to protect Clementine. She gives him a purpose. He is her mentor, the person responsible for teaching Clem about survival so she has a fighting chance against anything that might threaten her. Clementine understands this and appreciates Lee because of it. She has incredible amounts of respect for him. To the game itself, she is the main character whether you're playing as her or not. She is the face of Telltale's Walking Dead series. Clementine is important for being another character trying to survive, but comes from the unique position of being such an innocent child thrown into such chaos. Not many other characters can tell a story quite like hers. And I also have to take my hat off to Telltale for their successful portrayal of children in general, especially in such a dark and gruesome setting as a zombie apocalypse. That's a tough angle to write for. I don't know about you, but when it comes to bigger budget video games, I've often found children characters to be a little phoned in and misrepresented. Oh, it's just a kid, let's make them say some dumb words and do a few silly actions. Kids dance around a lot, don't they? Let's just make them do that, innit? But with Clementine, they seem to have sat down and focused on everything from children's mannerisms to how they think and act. They wanted Clementine, and any other child character for that matter, to feel genuine. Telltale wanted you to care about her. To the video game genre in general, it also shows how you can put children into a dark setting without watering down the impact of the story you're trying to tell. It keeps the message of the game strong. Actions have consequences, and The Walking Dead wants you to remember that, regardless of the character's age. By making its main star a child, it knows the risky park in which it throws its ball around in, but it does so with the confidence in its audience to catch it.
Conclusion.
Clementine is wonderful. She is a symbol of hope stranded in the middle of a crisis. She is the innocence that needs protecting and nurturing, the one pure thing that's worth giving your life for. This game wants you to feel the gravity of this character. It wants to draw you in and make sure you're paying attention to her. To me, it never felt like a chore. Clementine was never boring. I looked forward to every single moment when a new dialogue option popped up over her head and I could interact with her again. Her bond with Lee will have you smiling and crying. It's believable and effectively presented. Clementine without a doubt gets my Valhalla emblem. Not only is she my favourite character from this series, but I also feel she's one of the best representations of a child I've seen in this genre, and she is absolutely worth your time.